Zando Penguin Audio presents Glass Girls by Danie Shokoohi, narrated by Christine Lakin.
Dedication. To Nick and Ella, my beloved siblings, who have taught me how deep the well of love can go. This is a mean task, this business of burying oneself before one is dead. Bridget Pegeen Kelly. Without a functioning Broca's area, you cannot put your thoughts and feelings into words. Our scans showed that Broca's area went offline whenever a flashback was triggered. In other words, we had visual proof that the effects of trauma are not necessarily different from, and can overlap with, the effects of physical lesions like strokes. Even years later, traumatized people often have enormous difficulty telling other people what has happened to them. Trauma by nature drives us to the edge of comprehension, cutting us off from language based on common experience or an unimaginable past. Bessel van der Kolk. A lifetime ago. Once upon a time, when Isabeau and Bronwyn Glass were still small enough to share the top bunk of the camper, in the years before Killian's birth, before they moved into the little house, back further still, before their mother met Frank, before they'd even heard of Kirtland, Ohio, their mother would tell them a bedtime story. It was only a bedtime story in the sense that their mother told it to them after she'd tucked Beau and Bronwyn in for the night. The girls' new bedtime stories were meant to be sweet and soothing, an escape and a dream, but their mother's story offered no such paltry comfort. It was meant, instead, to teach a lesson. And so she saved it for when Beau and Bronwyn had behaved exceptionally poorly, or after she had read their tarot cards and foreseen their misdeeds. Night was when their mother was at her most dangerous, most capable of hurting them. The crackling overhead bulbs in the camper would camouflage her, dull the red in her hair, blur the sharpness of her freckles. She'd unfasten her many gold bangles, which jangled as she walked, and wipe the scarlet lipstick from her mouth. Without it, she'd look plucked, as fragile in her baggy t-shirt as a newly hatched crane. Their mother would smile through her story, but the smile, Beau knew, was an anglerfish, meant to lull them into complacency. At a single peep or whimper, she would snap her children into her mouth and gnash them up, bones and all. On their mother, softness was always a threat. The version of the story Beau remembers best, the one her mother told most often, began like this. Once there was a girl who cut off her shadow. The girl did it for love. She'd found herself with child, but her lover had refused to marry her. For she was the kind of girl like us, strange and marvelous. She could spell charms to bring down the rain and bake prosperity into pies. And she was born with the special gift of whispering the plants to harvest and the flowers to bloom. The lover named her magic a sickness, called her gift dark and devilish. That's often the way with men, my darlings. They will love you for your power and yet fear what you can do with it. Though the girl would likely have done better raising her child alone in the woods, as I did with you. She loved him. But because she refused to give her idiot lover up, and because everyone knows that all manner of wonders live in your shadow, she decided, instead, to do a brave and stupid thing. She decided to cut it off. The girl packed a flint in the pocket of her dress, and she searched deep into the heart of the forest until she found the place where the oldest and wisest oak tree lived. The girl knelt between its gnarled roots and bowed her copper head to the dirt. Old oak, she whispered. How can I cut my magic out? The tree told the girl, Young one, do not ask me for such a terrible thing. Twice more the girl asked the oak, and twice more the oak denied her. But the girl was quick, and the girl was clever. and the girl pulled the flint from the pocket of her dress and told the tree, old oak, tell me how to cut the magic out, or I will burn you down to a withered old stump. The old oak trembled and blustered and begged, but the girl was resolute, with the child stirring inside her. At last, his fear overcame his wisdom. Young one, it is not such a simple task to cut your shadow out, he said. The old oak told her then of the place where the forgotten gods had buried a knife so sharp it could carve a shadow free from the balls of a human's feet. But, he cautioned, if you want to keep the magic gone, you must cut a rune spell into your heels and fill the wound with the paste of angelica and dill, burned to ash on a full moon. You must pack it into the trough of the wound in order to make the scar raise properly, for this is a ritual that can only be completed once. I could tell you of the struggles she underwent to find this knife, of the sheerness of the cliff faces and the stalactite teeth of the caves, of her bleeding nail beds and the blisters on her palms. But some pains must belong to us alone. For all her ordeals, the girl found it at last, and on the new moon she scraped her shadow clean off and cut the bind runes in its place. She wept and bled and thought she might go mad with the loss of it. But then she remembered her lover. Now he will marry me, she thought. She hobbled to him, her footprints bloodied with the evidence of her love, and though the lover had once feared her for her magic, he could no longer love the cloven part of her that remained. And that's why we must never question our gifts. Not for anyone. Their mother would touch each of their cheeks, her hands blade cold. It is madness, my little loves, to buckle to the whims of a world that prioritizes happiness over power. Our gifts may be dark, and they may be dangerous, but without them, we'd be pathetically ordinary. Then their mother would flick off the lights, leaving the girls holding hands in the dark, shushing each other whenever one would try to speak, afraid she would hear them, afraid she would come back. Chapter 1. As Alice Haserot stares at the twin lines of the pregnancy test, her hands shake. She checks the booklet again. The test is still positive. She slumps to the bathroom floor, digs her fingers into the fronds of the rug as if they can ground her. It's February, most benign of all the months. The shortest, the youngest sister, filled with the bygone slush of January's pristine snows. Month of nothing all that important. Month of candy hearts staining the dirty mounds and the parking lots an artificial red. Month of the last few stubborn Christmas lights coming down. Nothing bad is supposed to happen in February. She needs to tell her boyfriend. She doesn't like calling Eli her boyfriend. It sounds juvenile and tender-hearted, but he loves the term, so she indulges him. She met Eli 2 years ago on a dating app. Alice asked him out because he looked like a magazine ad for a wristwatch, glossy and crisp. And that's what she'd thought she was looking for at the time. Their first date was to an ice cream shop, her pick. After Eli paid for her sundae, he admitted he was lactose intolerant, but had been too nervous to suggest somewhere else. In person, he had a prettiness she wanted to touch, to see if he was as delicate as he looked. They'd talked about kids on that first date. She was 32 then, and at 32, kids weren't theoretical. She'd been relieved when he said he didn't want any. Good, she thought. Not a worry here. Yet here she is, 2 years later, trapped in the bathroom with this damning piece of plastic. Except this is no time for Alice to be pregnant. Not ever, but especially not today. Alice had known that even as she pulled the test from its plastic wrapper. Susan, Eli's mother, lands in 2 hours, and Susan already dislikes her. Alice spent her morning in a frenzy of rubbing alcohol and wood polish, because when Alice gets anxious, she cleans. "It's okay," Eli said, gently prying a dish rag loose from her grip. "Mom doesn't really like me either. But Alice doesn't handle being disliked well.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?